The slave market. The sun was low over the desert city and the heat still rose in waves from the broken streets. Marcus walked with steady steps, his boots crunching on the dust, his soldier's uniform carrying the marks of battle, his eyes tired, but sharp. The war had ended in this sector only days ago, and yet the markets were already alive, filled with merchants, traders, and the cruel business of selling slaves. He had no desire to walk into the slave market, but duty pushed him there. The humans had won, and now the aliens who fought against them were considered spoils. The market was loud, chains clinking, voices shouting prices, and the smell of fear heavy in the air. Marcus hated this place, yet something inside told him he must walk further. At the center of the square, cages lined the ground, each one holding frightened aliens. Some were broken, their heads lowered, while others glared with quiet hatred. Marcus scanned the cages, telling himself he was only looking, only watching. But then he saw her. She stood taller than the rest, her body thin from hunger but her back straight. Her silver skin caught the light, glowing faintly even under the dirt. Her eyes, sharp, bright, almost burning, looked directly at Marcus as if daring him to step closer. Unlike the others, she did not cower. She did not beg. She stood in silence like a warrior forced into chains. Marcus paused, his hand tightening on the strap of his rifle. Why did she not look broken? Why did she not look afraid? The auctioneer shouted her number, raising the price high, calling her strong and beautiful. The crowd muttered, unsure, for strength in a slave was dangerous. Still Marcus did not move, but her eyes did not release him. The bidding began. Merchants and soldiers calling out prices. Marcus knew he should turn away, yet something inside his chest twisted. He told himself it was foolish, but when her gaze never broke from his, he raised his hand. The crowd grew quiet, whispers spreading. Why would a human soldier claim this? Alien girl. The auctioneer laughed, banging the hammer. Sold to the soldier in the gray uniform. The chain was handed to Marcus, cold and heavy in his palm. She was pushed toward him, stumbling but never breaking her stare. When she stood before him, he expected hatred or fear, but her face was calm, unreadable. Marcus felt the weight of the chain between them, but he also felt something else, something invisible. They walked out of the market, the sounds of trade fading behind them. Other soldiers looked at Marcus with curious eyes, some with envy, some with warning. Be careful with that one, a voice muttered. She looks dangerous. Marcus said nothing, but he felt the truth in those words. On the way to his quarters, the girl did not speak. Her steps were light, almost silent, though the chain rattled with each movement. Marcus glanced at her again and again, trying to understand what made her so different. There was a strength in her silence, a pride in the way she walked even. While bound, it was as if she carried a secret, as if the chains were nothing but illusions. Finally, inside the small barracks room, Marcus removed the chain from her wrists. He had no desire to keep her tied, though regulations demanded it. The moment the metal dropped away, she did not attack, did not run. Instead, she stood tall and turned her gaze on him again. Her eyes held no words, yet they seemed to say, "You will learn who I am." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to ask her name, but she gave none. He wanted to ask why she looked at him as if he were the prisoner, not her. But the silence stretched between them like a blade. Sharp and heavy, night fell over the desert city, and the market grew, quiet outside. Yet Marcus lay awake, unable to rest, the image of her eyes burning in his mind. He had claimed her as a slave, but in truth, he wondered who had claimed who. For deep inside, Marcus knew this was no ordinary alien captive, and, though he did not yet understand it, the choice he made in that market would change the fate of worlds. The silent rebellion. The barracks were quiet in the early morning, the air heavy with dust and the faint hum of machines outside. Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, his rifle, leaning against the wall, his eyes fixed on the girl sitting across the room. She had not moved much through the night, only shifting slightly. her posture straight even without chains. It was as if she had trained herself never to show weakness. Even in captivity, Marcus cleared his throat, the silence pressing on him like a weight. "You should eat," he said, sliding a plate of rations across the table. She looked at the food but did not touch it, her eyes rising again to meet his. They were sharp eyes, calm but burning, and Marcus felt uneasy under their gaze. He was used to prisoners begging or shouting, but this one, this alien girl, she said nothing. Hours passed, and Marcus tried again, speaking words he did not expect her to answer. "What is your name?" he asked. But the silence returned like a stone dropped into deep water. She tilted her head slightly, but no sound left her lips. It was not fear, Marcus realized. It was choice. She chose silence, and that choice was louder than words. Rumors began to spread among the soldiers. They whispered about the strange alien girl who would not bow, who would not cry. Some said she was cursed, others claimed she carried secrets. Marcus overheard the whispers and kept silent, though inside he wondered the same. One soldier, a man named Kern, mocked Marcus openly. "You think you can tame that one?" Kern laughed. "She'll cut your throat in your sleep." Marcus ignored him, but Kern's words echoed in his mind later that night. When he looked at her, he saw not a slave but a storm waiting to break. Days passed, and still she refused to eat more than a few bites. She moved with quiet grace, folding the blanket neatly, cleaning the small space without being asked. It was strange, almost unsettling, how she carried herself like she was not a captive but a guest. Marcus found himself watching her, searching for cracks in the mask. But there were none. One evening, while Marcus checked his rifle, he felt her presence behind him. He turned quickly, hand on the weapon, but she only stood there, calm and silent. He waited, expecting an attack, but she simply stared, her eyes unblinking. Then slowly she reached out and touched the weapon with one finger. Marcus froze. The touch was light, almost questioning, and then she withdrew. No words, no threat, only silence. Yet Marcus felt the power behind it. Later that night, Marcus left the room to patrol. When he returned, he found the table bare, the food untouched, but the blanket folded perfectly again. He sat down heavily, frustration rising. "Why won't you speak?" he whispered, though he knew she would not answer. The silence stretched, deep and endless. It was not the silence of fear, but of defiance, a rebellion stronger than any weapon. The next morning, Kern and two others came to Marcus's quarters. They wanted to see the alien girl for themselves. Kern grinned when she stood there, straight and proud, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "See, she thinks she's above us," Kern spat. "A slave with the pride of a queen." Marcus stepped between them, his voice low but firm. "Enough." Kern laughed and walked away, but Marcus saw the danger in the way the girl's eyes had narrowed. She had been insulted, and though she stayed silent, Marcus knew she would not forget. That night, Marcus dreamed of her. He dreamed of her standing in chains that melted away like smoke. He dreamed of her eyes glowing like fire, staring at him as if she saw something hidden within him. When he woke, sweat on his brow, she was still sitting there, calm and silent, as if guarding him in his sleep. Marcus realized then that her silence was not weakness, it was control. She gave nothing to her captors, no fear, no tears, no words to twist. She remained untouchable, and in that way, she was stronger than anyone in the barracks. He could not explain why, but Marcus began to respect her. He began to feel that maybe he was the prisoner, trapped by the weight of her unspoken words. As days turned to weeks, the girl's silence grew heavier. It became something the other soldiers feared, something Marcus could not ignore. And deep inside, Marcus felt the truth whispering to him. This girl was not a slave, not in her heart, not in her soul. She was something else, something dangerous, and the galaxy would not remain silent forever. The hidden mark. The nights in the desert city were colder than Marcus expected. The barracks walls did little to keep away the chill, and the silence of the alien girl pressed even heavier in the cold. She sat in her corner as always, back straight, Eyes sharp, never speaking, never bending, Marcus told himself he should not care, yet every day he felt the weight of her presence more. On the 5th night after the soldiers mocked her, Marcus noticed she was bleeding. A dark line of crimson, traced across her arm, hidden under the sleeve of her torn clothing. She had not made a sound, not a cry, not even a wince. Marcus frowned and stepped closer. "You're hurt," he muttered. She did not move, but her eyes flicked toward him, daring him to act. He pulled out the med kit, his hands steady from years of patching wounds. When he reached for her arm, she tensed, her muscles rigid as steel. "I'm not here to harm you," Marcus said softly, "but you'll die if you don't let me see." Slowly, almost reluctantly, she extended her arm. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the dim light. Marcus cleaned the cut, and as he moved the fabric away, he froze. Beneath the dirt and blood was a mark, carved into her flesh long ago. It was not just a scar, it was a crest, an intricate design that shimmered faintly as if alive. Marcus had seen many alien symbols in his campaigns, but never this. The pattern, curved like a crown of stars, a royal seal. His heart pounded. "What are you?" he whispered without meaning to. Her eyes snapped to his, fierce and unyielding. She said nothing, but the message was clear. She had been found. Marcus dropped the cloth, staring at the glowing crest. He remembered old reports, whispers in the ranks about the alien dynasties, families who ruled entire sectors. The humans had destroyed many thrones in the war, yet some royal bloodlines had vanished. Was this girl one of them? He finished bandaging her arm, his hands slower now, careful, respectful. When he leaned back, she pulled the sleeve down quickly, hiding the mark again. Her silence was deeper than before, like a shield. Around her secrets, Marcus sat down heavily, his mind racing. He had claimed a slave, but in truth he had taken someone far more dangerous. The next day, Marcus could not shake the thought of the crest. Every time he saw her eyes, he saw the same defiance, the same pride. It was not the pride of a prisoner. It was the pride of someone born to rule. He realized now why she would not break, why she would not speak. She carried herself like a queen, because she was one. That night, the barracks door creaked open, and Kern entered with 2 others. Marcus tensed, his hand moving toward his rifle. Kern smirked. "Relax. I just came to see your prize." The girl stood as they entered, her eyes narrow, her posture regal even in rags. Kern stepped closer, reaching for her arm. "Let's see what makes you so special." In a flash, Marcus was on his feet, grabbing Kern's wrist before he could touch her. "Leave," Marcus said coldly. "She's not yours to bother." Kern yanked his arm free, glaring. "You're too soft, Marcus. One day she'll slit your throat." With a laugh, he left. But Marcus knew it would not be the last time. When the room was quiet again, Marcus looked at her. She had not moved, but her eyes studied him carefully. He saw in them a question, almost as if she were asking why he had defended her. Marcus turned away, but his voice was low and certain. "Because no one should be treated like that, not you, not anyone." Later, as the moonlight spilled through the cracked window, Marcus sat awake. The girl lay against the wall, her breathing slow, her arm resting on her lap. He thought of the crest again, the shimmering mark of royalty burned into her skin. It was dangerous knowledge, knowledge that could cost him his life. If others discovered it, they would kill her without hesitation, perhaps even kill him for protecting her. Yet Marcus could not imagine betraying her secret. Something in him had shifted, a strange loyalty forming where there should have been none. He felt as though he was no longer her master, but her guardian. And though she had not spoken a single word, Marcus understood, this girl was not meant to remain in chains. The next morning, the city stirred with rumors of assassins moving in the dark alleys, whispers of strange figures searching for someone. Marcus listened, his stomach tightening. He knew without doubt they were searching for her. The girl who carried the crest, the hidden heir, the one who refused to break. As he returned to the barracks, Marcus found her already watching him. Her silence pressed on him once more, but now he thought he understood it better. It was not rebellion alone. It was protection. Every word she did not speak was a shield. Every secret she held back was a weapon. And Marcus knew that soon the silence would shatter. And when it did, nothing in the galaxy would be the same. The assassin's arrival, the desert city never truly slept. Even in the dead of night, traitors whispered in the alleys, guards patrolled the walls, and shadows moved where light could not reach. Marcus knew danger lived in every corner. But that night he felt a different kind of threat. The air was sharp, heavy, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Inside the barracks, Marcus sat cleaning his rifle, the girl sitting across from him as always. She was silent, her eyes half closed. But Marcus had learned not to mistake silence for weakness. Her wounds had healed. Though she kept the royal crest hidden under her sleeve, Marcus's thoughts returned again and again to the mark. He had taken a slave, but in truth he had found someone who could change the galaxy. A sound outside made him stop, the faint scrape of metal against stone. His instincts sharpened, years of battle reminding him when something was wrong. He signaled her to stay quiet, though she had not spoken a word since the day he claimed her. He moved to the window, peering into the dark street. At first he saw nothing, then he noticed them. 3 figures cloaked in black, moving like shadows. They were not merchants, not guards. Their movements were too precise, too deadly. Marcus grabbed his rifle and whispered, "Stay back." The door burst open without warning, splinters flying across the room. The assassins rushed inside, blades flashing in the dim light. But they did not come for Marcus, they came for her. The girl moved quickly, dodging the first strike with the grace of a warrior. Though her hands were empty, Marcus fired a shot. The sound echoing through the barracks, one assassin dropped, the other 2 spread apart, circling like predators. Marcus stepped in front of her, firing again, forcing one to retreat behind a wall. The last one lunged at her, blade raised high. For the first time, the girl's mask of calm cracked. Her eyes flared with fury. She twisted aside, grabbing the assassin's wrist, slamming him into the table with surprising strength. Marcus shot the second attacker before he could strike again. The room filled with smoke and blood, the last assassin on the ground, gasping. His final breath, Marcus turned quickly. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice sharp. She stood tall, her chest rising with heavy breaths, her sleeve torn, the royal crest glowing faintly in the moonlight. For a long moment Marcus stared, his fears confirmed. The assassins had not come for slaves, they had come for royalty. And now he understood. Her silence, her pride, her strength. It all made sense. She was not just anyone. She was the last of a royal bloodline hunted by her enemies. The girl looked at him, her eyes softer now, as if she knew he had seen the truth. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came, only silence again. Marcus did not press her, but his mind raced. If assassins were here, then others would follow. The galaxy believed her kind dead, yet here she stood, alive, and that secret could kill them both. Marcus dragged the bodies outside, hiding them in the shadows before other soldiers arrived. When he returned, she was still standing, the crest glowing faintly through the torn fabric. "You should cover that," he said quietly. And to his surprise, she pulled the cloth over her arm without resistance. For the first time, it felt like she had listened to him. Not as a master, not as a captor, but as someone she chose to trust, even if only a little. The following days were tense. Rumors spread of strange killings in the night. But Marcus kept silent. He told no one of the assassins, no one of the glowing crest. The other soldiers noticed his nervousness but assumed it was the stress of war. Only Marcus knew the truth. The enemy was hunting her, and by protecting her, he had become a target too. Each night he checked the locks, sharpened his blade, and kept the rifle ready. She never spoke, but her eyes told him she understood. When he patrolled the room, she watched him, her gaze steady, unblinking. They were not allies yet, but they were no longer strangers. The bond between them had begun to form, not with words, but with fire and blood. One night, Marcus sat by the window, the desert wind cold against his skin. He looked at her, sitting in the corner, her silver skin glowing faintly under the moonlight. "You're not just surviving," he whispered. "You're waiting." Her eyes flickered, a spark of something deeper hidden within. It was not denial, not anger, it was truth. She was waiting, biding her time, holding her silence until the moment came. Marcus knew then that he had stepped into something far greater than himself. He had thought she was a slave, but she was a queen in disguise. And now assassins had come for her, proof that her enemies still feared her. The war might have ended, in the desert, but in truth another war was only beginning, and Marcus, whether he wished it or not, had become part of it. The barracks felt different after the night of the attack. Marcus could not erase the image of cloaked assassins rushing in, their blades aimed not at him but at her. Every sound outside the door made his hand tighten around his rifle. Every shadow looked like danger waiting to strike. The war might have ended in the city, but Marcus knew a larger battle was forming around them. The girl sat in her usual place, silent and watchful, but something in her had shifted. Her silence no longer felt like defiance alone. It carried weight, as if she was deciding whether to finally trust him. Marcus could not force her to speak, but the truth burned between them like fire. He had seen the crest on her arm, glowing faintly with royal light. He had seen assassins come for her life. She was not a slave. She was something greater, and hiding her had now become his burden. One morning, Marcus stood at the window, the desert sun spilling into the room. He turned to her and said quietly, "If I hand you over, they will kill you. If I hide you, they will kill me too." Her eyes met his, calm but sharp. Marcus sighed. "So tell me, what am I supposed to do?" For a moment he thought she would stay silent again. But then her lips parted. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper carried by wind, but the words were clear. "My name is Lyra." Marcus froze, the sound of her voice breaking the silence like thunder. It was the first word she had spoken since he claimed her. Lyra. The name echoed in his mind, heavy with meaning. "I am not what they say I am," she continued slowly. "I am the last of my house, the last daughter of the crown." Her eyes did not waver. "They will hunt me until I am dead unless someone helps me." Marcus's throat tightened. She had finally spoken, finally revealed what he already feared. She was royalty, the last heir to a fallen empire, and now her life was his responsibility. If he gave her up, the humans would reward him, perhaps even promote him. If he protected her, he would become a traitor to his own people. The choice was clear, but the weight of it crushed him. That night, Marcus walked the empty streets of the city. He thought of his fellow soldiers, of the humans who had fought and died in the war. He thought of the empire Lyra claimed, the enemy they had crushed. Was it right to risk everything for her? And yet, when he closed his eyes, all he saw was her silence, her strength, and the fire in her eyes. She was not like the others, and Marcus could not explain why, but he knew betraying her would destroy something inside him. When he returned to the barracks, she was waiting. She stood as if she had been awake all night, her eyes fixed on him. "You doubt," she said, her voice steady. "But doubt makes you human." Marcus exhaled sharply. "Human, yes, but what does that mean when I'm protecting someone who once ruled over those who killed my kind?" Lyra stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "I never chose this war, I never chose slavery, but I choose now to fight for life." Her words cut through him, simple but true. She was not asking for chains to be removed. She was asking for her life. Marcus stared at her, then finally nodded. "You trust me with your secret, so I will trust you with mine," he said. "I will protect you, Lyra. But if this choice brings death, we face it together." Lyra's eyes softened, just for a moment, and Marcus felt something shift between them. It was not loyalty born of orders, not duty born of command. It was something fragile but strong. Trust. She bowed her head slightly, a gesture not of slavery but of respect, and whispered, "Then you are not my captor, you are my shield." The days that followed tested Marcus's decision. Soldiers grew suspicious of his silence. Whispers spread that he was hiding something. Kern watched him more closely, his mocking grin turning into sharp suspicion. At night, Marcus trained Lyra in secret, showing her how to hold a blade, how to fire a weapon. She was quick to learn, her movements graceful and sharp. It was clear she had been trained before, perhaps as royalty forced to prepare for war. As they trained, Marcus began to see the truth in her words. She was not fragile, not weak, not a burden. She was fire hidden in ash. Every strike she delivered, every stance she held, reminded him of who she truly was. A queen in hiding, not a slave. But Marcus also knew the choice he made had sealed their fates. The assassins would not stop. His fellow soldiers might turn against him. And if the galaxy discovered Lyra was alive, the war would ignite again. Yet Marcus felt no regret, for in choosing to protect her, he had chosen something greater than survival. He had chosen honor that night. As the desert winds howled outside, Lyra sat across from him, her eyes no longer distant but steady, filled with quiet strength. "You chose me when you could have left me," she said softly. Marcus nodded. "And I will keep choosing you no matter what comes." The silence between them was no longer heavy with fear. It was a silence of understanding, the bond of two, lives tied together by one dangerous choice. The bond forged in fire. The city felt different after Marcus made his choice. Every step he took carried a heavier weight. Every glance from another soldier seemed sharper, filled with suspicion. Marcus knew he had crossed a line. No longer a loyal soldier following orders, but a man protecting an alien girl who was far more than she seemed. And Lyra knew it too. Her silence broken only by short words now. Her eyes no longer defiant but steady, watching him closely. They trained in secret. At night when the barracks grew quiet, Marcus placed a blade in her hands, teaching her the movements of a soldier. Lyra moved with natural grace, her strikes quick and sharp, her balance flawless. Marcus realized she had been trained before, perhaps not as a warrior of the battlefield, but as someone prepared for danger. Every time their blades crossed, Marcus felt the fire of her spirit, and every time she met his eyes, he felt his own strength grow. Their bond deepened not in words, but in survival. When Kern and the other soldiers grew bolder with their questions, Marcus stood firm, shielding her from their suspicion. When whispers of assassins spread again, Lyra watched the windows at night, her senses sharp. It was as if they were no longer captor and captive, but two fighters sharing the same battlefield. One evening, while Marcus cleaned his rifle, Lyra finally spoke more than a single sentence. "Why do you risk yourself?" she asked quietly, her voice carrying curiosity more than doubt. Marcus looked at her, surprised by the sudden question. "Because no one deserves chains, not you, not anyone." Lyra studied him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You fight with honor, but honor can burn a man alive," she said. Marcus gave a half smile. "Then let it burn me, but not you." The bond between them grew stronger with every passing day, tested by fire, forged in silence and blood. It showed itself the night the barracks came under attack again. A squad of masked assassins slipped through the shadows, their blades gleaming under moonlight. They struck fast, bursting through windows and doors. But this time Marcus and Lyra were ready. Marcus fired the first shot, dropping one assassin before he reached the bed. Lyra snatched a blade from the floor, moving with deadly precision. Her strikes were not wild but calculated, each movement like a dancer trained in war. Together they fought, back to back, covering each other in perfect rhythm. Marcus's rifle roared, Lyra's blade flashed. The room became fire and smoke. One assassin leapt toward Marcus, blade raised, but Lyra moved faster. She caught the attackers, wrist and twisted, driving the weapon into his chest. Her eyes burned as she stood over the fallen man, her chest heaving with controlled fury. Marcus met her gaze. No words needed. Their bond was sealed in that moment. When the last body fell, Marcus dropped his rifle, sweat running down his face. Lyra wiped the blade clean, her breathing heavy but steady. The barracks was a ruin, smoke curling from shattered wood, blood staining the floor, and yet in the middle of the destruction, they stood alive. together, unbroken. After the fight, Marcus sank into a chair, his chest rising and falling. Lyra sat across from him, the blade still in her hand, her eyes softer now. "You are not like the others," she said quietly, her voice carrying something almost gentle. Marcus shook his head. "I'm just a man who made a choice." Lyra leaned forward, her eyes locked on his, "A choice that may decide more than your life." From that night forward, they were no longer separate. Every plan, every step, every watch through the window was done together. Marcus showed her the maps of human patrols, teaching her the paths through the city. Lyra shared small fragments of her past. Never the whole story, but enough for Marcus to understand the weight she carried. She spoke of fire raining from the skies, of betrayal in her own house, of a crown that turned to ashes. Her words were few, but they carried the power of entire histories. For Marcus, the bond was no longer just duty. It was something deeper. He could not explain it, but he felt tied to her in ways he had never felt tied to another soldier, another comrade, or even his own family. She was fire and he was shield, and together they were something the galaxy had not prepared for. When the soldiers outside began to grow restless, Marcus noticed their stares. Kern in particular seemed more dangerous now, his eyes filled with suspicion and envy. Marcus knew it was only a matter of time before the truth slipped out, before the hunters came again in greater numbers. But when he looked at Lyra, standing tall even in rags, her eyes glowing with quiet strength, he felt ready. Whatever storm was coming, they would face it together. That night, as the desert winds howled like a warning, Marcus spoke words he never thought he would say. "You are not my prisoner, Lyra. You are my ally." Lyra's lips curved faintly, not quite a smile, but something close. "And you," she replied softly, "are no longer my captor, but my blade." The silence that followed was not heavy, not cold, but warm. It was the silence of trust, the silence of a bond forged in fire. And as the night grew darker, Marcus knew that the world outside could no longer see her as a slave, for she was a queen, and he had chosen to stand beside her, no matter the cost. The crown unveiled. The city could not hold its secrets forever. Whispers spread like fire in dry grass. Soldiers muttered in the streets. Merchants looked nervously over their shoulders, and the name of assassins filled every shadow. Marcus knew the walls were closing in. Every day brought new danger. Every night felt heavier with threats. But beside him, Lyra stood stronger than ever, no longer a silent prisoner but a queen hidden in plain sight. Kern was the first to strike. He confronted Marcus in the yard, his eyes blazing with anger. "You think you can hide her from us?" he shouted. Other soldiers gathered, drawn by his voice, their faces hard with suspicion. Marcus kept his hand on his rifle, but Lyra stepped forward before he could answer. She pulled her torn sleeve back, revealing the glowing crest on her arm. Gasps rippled through the crowd, fear and awe mixing in their eyes. "I am Lyra of the Crown," she said, her voice steady, echoing across the yard. Her words cut through the silence like thunder. Some soldiers backed away, others tightened their grips on their weapons. Kern sneered. "A royal parasite, nothing more. You should have died with your empire." Lyra's eyes flashed. "And yet I live," she said, her voice strong, "and I will not die as a slave." Marcus stepped to her side, his rifle raised, his voice sharp. "If anyone wants her dead, they come through me." The soldiers shifted uneasily, torn between loyalty to their ranks and the fear of what stood before them. Kern spat at the ground and stormed away, but Marcus knew this was only the beginning. Her secret was no longer hidden, and the galaxy would soon know that Lyra still lived. That night, the assassins came again, not in threes but in tens. The barracks shook with battle, blades clashing against metal, gunfire cracking through the darkness. Marcus fought with every ounce of strength, his rifle roaring, his blade flashing when the bullets ran dry. Lyra fought beside him, her movements sharp and deadly, her eyes burning with the fury of her bloodline. They moved as one, back to back, two warriors standing against the storm. The fight seemed endless, bodies falling one after another, the air thick, with smoke and the stench of blood. At last silence returned, broken only by their ragged breathing. The barracks was destroyed, the ground littered with the fallen, but they still stood unbroken. And in that silence, Marcus knew the truth had already spread beyond the city. The assassins would not stop. The humans would not ignore it. The galaxy itself would turn its eyes toward her. Lyra turned to Marcus, her silver skin streaked with dust and blood, her crest glowing brighter than ever. "You chose me." "She," said softly, "and now your choice will echo across worlds." Marcus met her gaze, his voice firm despite his exhaustion, then let it echo, "I will not turn back." The following days were filled with chaos. Messengers ran through the city, human commanders demanded answers, and rumors of a surviving alien queen spread faster than anyone could stop. Lyra no longer hit her mark, no longer lowered her gaze. She walked through the streets with her head high, every step declaring what she truly was. A princess no longer in chains, but a queen unveiled before the world. Some spat at her feet, others bowed without meaning to, but all recognized the fire in her presence. Marcus stayed close, his rifle always ready, his eyes scanning for danger. The bond between them was no longer hidden, no longer fragile. It was steel, forged in fire and sharpened by blood. They were no longer captor and captive, no longer soldier and slave. They were allies, bound by choice, bound by survival, bound by trust. At night, Marcus sat beside her on the broken wall of the barracks, the desert wind cold against his face. "You are a queen now, Lyra," he said quietly. "But what does that mean for us?" Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes glowing in the moonlight. "It means I cannot hide anymore," she answered. "But it also means I cannot stand alone." She reached out, placing her hand lightly on his. "You gave me freedom when you could have taken power. You stood when others would have bowed. You are no longer just my protector, Marcus. You are part of my crown." Her words struck deeper than any blade. Marcus felt the truth of them, heavy and unshakable. He had chosen her when the galaxy would have killed her, and now that choice had become something greater than himself. Together they would face the storms to come. Together they would carry the weight of her crown. As dawn broke over the desert, the first rays of sunlight painted the sky with gold. The people stirred, the city waking once more. But in the heart of the chaos, in the ruins of war, a queen had risen from chains, and beside her stood a human soldier who had once claimed her as a slave. Now her ally, her shield, her bond. The galaxy would remember this day, the day the crown was unveiled,